Hello, everyone. My name is Art Gruenberger. Welcome to Meet Our Mentors. I'm so happy that you have joined us here this evening. I would like you to help me welcome a Crabgrass Puppet Theater. Hello, Bonnie. Hello, Jamie. How are you?
Yo,
We are here.
we are here. We are in Vermont. We are cold.
You're in Vermont. I got to tell you, it was 74 degrees here in California. I was in shorts and a hoodie outside, sitting by the pool. So enjoy Vermont.
Thanks, Art.
Thanks. How's the skiing?
Outstanding. Tahoe's an hour and a half away. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so glad we got to do a little tech check this morning, and I've just been glowing all day long because I enjoyed so much just getting to chit chat with you guys a little bit, and I've been really looking forward to getting to talk to you about your career, about your mentors, about all of it. So let's jump in. Can you tell me first of all, how did you two meet, and then how did you get into puppetry?
I got into puppetry when I was in high school, and I did a project for a theater class on puppetry, and my theater teacher, Mike Parrish, in Greensboro, North Carolina, said, do you want to start a puppet troupe next year? And in my senior year, I started a puppet troupe. Halfway through, I realized that's what I wanted to do for my life, and that's how I got into it.
And I had not seen a puppet show since I was very little. It had a duck in it, I think. And then I was at UConn in the acting program and got cast in a show called The Golden Cockerel with actors and puppets. And I was doing little mask work, a little voice work, a little bit of puppetry. And then in that show, I met people like Bart Rockaburton, Brad Williams, Lynn Hippen. And I did a show with Brad Williams, a stage show, Tartuffe, where he played Orgon and I played Dami, the son, and just got to know him really well. And then he said he was doing his MFA, which was going to be a Commedia dell'arte. This picture is great because it looks like we're getting married, but actually Bonnie and I weren't even together at that moment.
We were actually split.
It was in the stars.
But yes, there's Brad. We lost Brad in 92, I believe it was, in a car accident. But Brad was one of our favorite people and one of our major mentors, along with Bart Rockaburton, who was also at UConn at the time. Pam Arciero was there. This is a picture of Pandemonium Puppet Company, which both Jamie and I worked for. Jamie for much longer. That's Bart and Margie and Jamie there. And then after I graduated from college, which I did a year late because I'd transferred.
You missed the part where we were in Brad's MFA where where Bonnie played my father.
That's when we got together. It was when I was playing Jamie's father. So anyway, Jamie and I left Pandemonium and moved out to San Francisco, where we started our own company.
Yeah. Neat. And how long were you guys in the Bay Area for? That's, of course, my stomping ground. And
we were there for about 8 years, but in terms of, 8 years in your 20s is like 40 years worth of experiences. And that's what it was like.
Yeah.
I don't think we could fit that much into about 100 years of life now. It was a lot of stuff. Met a lot of people. Letty Schubert.
Yeah.
Letty Connell Schubert.
Mike and Val.
Lee Armstrong, Mike and Val. Pamela. Yeah, all of those people. We had a wonderful bunch of people out there.
Mike Osnowitz, Francis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you guys were starting out, did you already have a sense of how you were going to divide up the labor of performing together, or did you already have a sense of that right away, or how did that develop?
That has always kind of just gone the way it was going to go. I mean, I've always been the visual and design person, though I wasn't as good at it when I started out as I ended up. And we both perform. We both create the shows. Jamie handled the staging and lights and sound.
Yeah, it's just what, we filled in each other's gaps really well.
Yeah.
And then if there was a gap that neither of us was filling, one of us just filled it. We just did it.
And if there's something we didn't know how to do, we eventually learned how to do it. That's one of the things that we did. We put together 28 shows over the course of our career, and we tried to learn at least one major new skill with every show. This is something that I learned from watching my mother over my lifetime, because my mother can do anything and has done everything, and she can do it all really well. And she'll do something, she'll get really good at it, and then she'll just move on to something else, and then conquer that too. So
my friend Nick Barone,
I'm
he used to
trying
say,
emulate my mother.
Nick used to say that he loved building the first arm of a puppet because he was designing it and making it. And then he hated building the second arm because he'd already done it. Now he was just duplicating it. And so it wasn't the creative work anymore. It was just now cranking out another arm. So it sounds like that's maybe a similar thing, right?
Well, he's better than I am, because I always figure with any project, whether it's puppets or house, I do it once and then it's like, oh, now I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get to do it again sometime.
And then 10 years later, you're like, how did I do that? I did it the first, yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the very first show that you guys did as Crabgrass Puppet Theater?
The first show was called What a Clever Idea. And for those of you who are trying to make a living in puppetry, in the Bay Area in 1982, you could title a show What a Clever Idea. And people would buy it. People would do it. And that was 2 stories.
This is a story from the Yiddish story of a fool and her goat. And so we did that with masks, and obviously the goat's a puppet. The goat keeps getting switched for a chicken. And then the other piece in it.
The other piece was a story of Finn McCool and Cuchulainn or Cuchulainn. Every time we went and met an Irish person, they gave us a different pronunciation of Cuchulainn.
But they were life-size puppets, and 2 of them grew to 7 feet tall during the show.
We'd just been touring with Pandemonium before this, and Pandemonium at that point was doing short vignette style shows. Elventide was all a piece of a single show, but it was definitely made up of a bunch of different pieces. And then so for our show, we was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do longer stories, give them more than 7 or 8 minutes. And then our next show, we said, that vignette in a booth thing. I like that.
That
vignette
nice.
In a booth thing. That would be good.
Let's do that.
And that show is called Crabgrass Uprising. And that's where eventually we found the name Crabgrass. At first, we didn't have a name for the company. We were just What a Clever Idea, because that's the only show we had. And then we were Puppet Work of San Francisco. And then when we moved back east, there were already at least 3 companies with Puppet Work in their title.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we went for Crabgrass. Yeah.
And in the Bay Area, there's Theater Works and all sorts of other, Crabgrass is definitely the original for sure. I love it. What was the catalyst for you guys to head east? What made you decide to do that?
2 things. The seasons. We miss the seasons.
I know you can get them, Art, but you have to drive to go there.
You do.
Worth it.
We like them to just happen, But the seasons and family. We have a lot of nieces and nephews, and they were getting born, and we were not here, and so we moved.
Yeah, and we moved to California partly because it wasn't Connecticut, where I grew up and where we both went to school, and where we had people everywhere we know. Everywhere we went, there was huge amounts of people. So we went someplace where we knew 2 people, and it was great. We loved it. We would move back to San Francisco in a second if that was a good idea, but it's not right now. And also, the dirt was wrong in California.
Jamie's a gardener.
Ah,
The
is it
dirt
a
was
pH thing, or welcome to Meet Our
Yes.
Mentors Gardening Edition?
it's just oh, we are crabgrass, which will
See,
grow
there you
anywhere.
go. Nice, nice. What? So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the mentors that that you guys experienced, and we were talking earlier this morning about mentors. Sometimes it's a very formal thing, and sometimes it's just people that have just influenced you, like a show that you saw, or somebody that said just that one thing that sort of changed the trajectory of where your company or where your performance style or your art form moved to. Who's one of the mentors early on in your career that helped guide you into what you became?
They didn't mentor us, but Code Canada puppets, Lumen and Arlen Code, were very important to us. We had never met them until we did our first festival out in the Bay Area. There's a picture of Arlen. And Arlen was an amazing puppet designer. And she is shape-based and not at all realistic. And I always zoned in on her pictures in puppet books. And okay, here's an Arlen, that's an Arlen inspired puppet. This is the prince from our production of Princess and the Pea and Frog Prince, which Jamie did with David Regan. This is the one show in the Crabgrass. No, there's more now. There are a few that I've never performed, but that's one of them. That's always been David Regan's show with Jamie. And David also designed the set for that. And it's stunning.
We'll get to him in a minute.
Yeah, but
what were your puppets looking like before you had this influence of like were you being more realistic in your design, or
no? Because I've had Arlen in my head and other people. Carl Schroeder. Carl Schroeder from Germany. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's another person who goes for the grand gesture in terms of design. You don't get interrupted with all these little details. It's like you really go for one gesture, and that's what I tried to get to. We don't have anything from What a Clever Idea.
We may have a mask somewhere, but it's not readily available.
Keep going.
And yeah, we've always, from the very beginning, we knew some things. We knew that puppets were not people and did not move like people, did not act like people. It was all about stylization. Every show that we create has its own physics. When you see the clip of Jabberwocky, you'll really get a better idea of that has its own botany too. And it's so nothing was super realistic. Another influence, two influences together are Mary Churchill and Paul Vincent Davis.
Yeah.
As I say, I came into puppetry knowing nothing about puppetry. And, but being at UConn, people like Dick Myers came in, and Albrecht Roser came in, and the Powells came through and did it. And so I got to see this stuff. And then Bonnie and I both got to go to the Unima Festival in Washington, D.C. in 1980, which was mind-blowing.
Yeah, that was huge. That really was huge in terms of opening up our brains to the possibilities of puppetry. That was an amazing festival.
And what I love about Mary and Paul, and also the Codes, is they worked almost exclusively for family audiences, which is, and they were proud of it. This was the work they were called to do. They weren't embarrassed or they weren't apologetic about it. And that's the way we felt too. We were creating shows this whole time that we wanted to do, that we wanted to see. Shows mostly to entertain ourselves.
Yeah, we'll make ourselves laugh, you know.
Yeah.
And
fortunately enough, other people liked it too and were willing to pay us for it for 40 years.
Yeah, but there's nothing, well, Art, you know this. There's nothing like hearing 500 children laugh at exactly the point where you want them to, and then be quiet again. And then it's like, there's absolutely nothing like it. It's
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it feels like shooting fish in a barrel, but there is, but right. But there is, I mean, like when you learn proper audience management skills and you
Right.
learn how to both get them riled up and then bring them right down, and you feel like you could lean a little bit and the whole audience is going to lean with you. That is a very, very magical thing. Hey, let's
I
take a
was,
little look at just a little bit of video, just a short clip. If you'd like to join in the conversation, please feel free to join us on YouTube. You can type in the chat. We'd love to hear comments from you. We'd love to hear your questions from you. Let's take a look at this little video right here, and then we'll be back in just a moment.
I'm free. I feel marvelous. I feel hungry. One, two, three, four. Milky White, this is important.
In those days, every well-brought-up prince who wanted to get married was expected to kill a dragon and rescue a princess.
Dragon, we're not scared of you. The prince will chop your head off, and we'll have dragon stew.
Fine! Follow the sign, she said. And so I shall. Inner Mongolia, Outer Mongolia. I wonder how they tell them apart. This is the dragon.
Fantastic. Such a variety of style and work. And there was, what was the show where the guy was hiding behind the palm tree? Which show was that?
That was Tortillas.
the day it snowed tortillas.
What that was, the puppets had such a great spring in them to make them, like it made it feel like such a great cartoony move when the lower torso would move and the rest
Right.
of the body would sort of catch up to it. That's so
that was
well
really
sprung.
fun. That was a really fun show.
That's Rosa from Tortillas. One of the things that we did a lot of was to use more than one staging area in shows. So we often had a playboard and a tabletop, or a playboard and a shadow screen. Sometimes we had 3 different playing areas, but we often had many versions of one character that appeared in different puppet forms. So a shadow puppet of the princess, a rod puppet of the princess, several hand puppets of the princess, that kind of
Seven
thing.
stunt doubles of the princess
Yeah,
and
that's-
princess and the
And
pea.
Princess and the
I think
Pea.
we saw that in the little video clip when the prince in the car disappeared and then a different
Yep.
puppet popped up, but it was the prince, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's for us, the credo of Crabgrass is whatever works. It's we're not hung up on a particular style, a particular form, we just want to do what looks right and what suits the show.
It's kind of seemed like when we were coming out of the 70s and coming into the 80s, people weren't doing just marionettes or just rod puppets or just glove puppets. It was exactly what you were talking about. It's like, well, what puppet is going to best help us tell this story? And you got that, which seems like the perfect time to be coming into puppetry, at least for me as well. I just love that you get to just create whatever is going to work within the puppet format.
Yeah, it's such freedom. Because we're really not bound by anything except our own imaginations, and then having to
Build it.
Well, there's that part, right?
Yeah.
Aisha says, how do your goals change performance-wise when you were first putting shows on to later in your career?
That's a good question, sweetie. This is one of the nieces we had to move back for.
Actually, that niece was the model for the little girl in the umbrella climbing the tree and jumping around in the umbrella piece.
That's right.
That's so cool.
That's right. In terms of performance-wise, that's interesting. One of the things that I remember thinking about was that we wanted to get more and more control over the audience. We're kind of control freaks, but it is, once you have a basic level of control with a children's audience, it is really fun to push that, see how much information they can get from movement and visuals, and how little, for one thing, how little you can use words. That was one of the things that we always were aiming for, is how few words can we use? Because we feel really strongly that puppetry is mainly visuals and movement. It's choreography. And we never write a script before we create a show. We brainstorm the show, we move through the show, we do everything we can to figure out how to tell the story, and then if we can, and then what we need to, we fill in with words. But we do as much visually as we possibly can, and that's one of the main things we were working toward later in our careers.
I remember specifically Preston Furter and Paul Vincent Davis saying the exact same sentences. I wait till I can see all of the entire show in my head before I start building.
Huh.
That's not quite the way we work, because we're also really influenced by the actual physical properties of the figure, the puppet. That often tells us it's so much easier to do what the puppet wants to do than to try to make it do something that it really does not want to do, even if that's what you really want it to do.
Just let it do what it's going to do.
Just let it.
There's nothing more frustrating than building a replacement puppet for a puppet that's worn out, and then having to let that puppet teach you what it can do instead of trying to teach it the show, right? No, this is what your old guy was doing, and why? And it's like, nope,
Right.
that's not gonna happen.
And then you find out that the reason the puppet did that was because you'd been using it for 5 years and it had aged into those particular movement characteristics. And you can't do that with a new one. You can't age it.
Yeah. There's no instant aging. We're getting so many comments about that great shadow image where the umbrella is spinning. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you guys came up with that?
That was from the show Haiku, Hip Hop, and Hot Dogs that we built with Fergus Walsh, who is an Irish puppeteer who was in the US for a while and went to UConn as a grad student at UConn. And that came at a time when I was ready to go off the road almost permanently. And we hired Fergus in, and the three of us built this poetry show. The piece that the shadow umbrella was for was
Every Time I Climb a
Every
Tree.
Time I Climb a Tree. Yeah,
And I can't remember who the poet is.
I can't either.
We'd have to look it up.
But yeah, so
And that one is one where we went from a girl puppet walking out on this across the tabletop, jumping up into the umbrella, and then the lights changed, and it was the shadow image of her. And then at the end, she flops down back out of the tree as a 3D puppet.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. How fun. I mean, like it always feels so good when you finally get there, right? It's like, what's the visual? And then it finally works. And then
because there's so much opportunity for death by puppet in, along the way.
Yeah.
or show deadline and this is good enough is always the curse,
Yes.
right? It's
You don't like that. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about one of our major influences, which is David Regan.
I love David Regan. He's such a great guy. What a
he-
talent and what a nice guy. I mean, what a jerk to be both talented and just like a super nice guy. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Also, he's a really great cook.
Of course he is.
Wedding cakes, he does wedding cakes.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he let us be his agent, he'd never sleep. So we did a lot of shows against Black backgrounds.
At the beginning, there's Dave.
Yeah. And
There he
That's not ours he's working on. That's something of his.
that's for a Midsummer Night's Dream, actually. That's the asshead for
Nice.
yeah. And Dave came to UConn. He's actually he's about our age, a little bit older, but he came to UConn as a 35-year-old to study puppetry, and then got his set design master fine arts and set design. And when Dave joined, he joined us, and we were doing a show called The Frog Prince and the Princess and the Pea. I don't know if Brad can find that slide quickly, or The Reluctant Dragon Boy and Dragon slide. But Dave came in, it's like, whoa, we need to up our scenic stuff.
Yeah, so that is Frog Prince, and so
That's
you can
beautiful.
get an idea of Dave's set. This
Yeah.
is what Dave can do. This and there were a lot of there was one main reason why we did a lot of shows against Black before this,
Yeah.
because I can't do that. I did get better at sets, but never as good as Dave.
And so Dave's been a friend of ours for since whatever 92.
92.
92.
Yeah.
And he's worked with us several times. He toured with us for a 3-year period, and then several other times. And he's the one we call in. It's like, man, we really need a treasure chest. Let's get Dave.
Call Dave.
The angles in the designs in his designs are so wonderfully off kilter and bizarre. They're just absolutely beautiful. I love it.
Yes, he does weird things with perspective.
Yeah, everything's wonky. Wonky
Yeah.
is his. And
Even
this-
the stairs look amazing. I mean, that's
Yes.
incredible. Yeah.
And that was also something where I learned, I'd kind of drawn out what we wanted. And then Dave went off for 2 hours with a lump of clay and came back with a full model in clay. I scaled that up. We had to adjust a couple of angles because they looked great, but were impossible for the puppets to move on. And then I said, and we need a door at the top of the stairs. He goes, why? I said, because they go up the stairs and through the door. And he goes, well, why do you need a door? I said, because that's what they go through. And the answer is, of course, we don't need a door.
Yeah.
We just need the stairs going up.
So
Yeah.
when you started working with Dave, how the next time you were designing a show, would you think, okay, we don't have to figure this part out. We know it's going to be this way, or how did that influence like the next several shows that you knew that you could rope Dave in to be part of?
Well, Dave actually designed just 2 of our shows. The other one was a remount of our show, The Reluctant Dragon. And that was a full stage, big full stage show with 3 performers, Bonnie and Dave and I. And also Jim Napolitano often came along to run lights for us in big venues. I've got more to say about Jim in a minute too.
I think he's on with us right now. Hi, Jim.
Yeah, hey Jim.
Hey, Nappy.
But from there's
There we go. Okay,
there's-
so this is Dave's set. The puppets are mine. The set's Dave's. Look at the painting, you know, and this is quilted.
Wow.
To give it some dimension, and this is just, you know, Dave.
How big is the boy there? How is he life size?
He's about 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a full stage show. We did some really big venues in those days. And then it was really hard, especially for Bonnie, to lug the 12-foot tall dragon across 40 foot of stage. And also the market changed a little bit for us. We didn't want to tour to the Midwest and big theaters so much. So in answer to your question, that really gave us a better idea of what we could do within our talents to create some scenery. And if you look at some, like the Day of Snow Tortillas set that you saw in the video, with those big, elaborate
sunflowers,
and the Last Dragon show. I don't know if we have a picture of that, but
there's the tortilla set. One of the things that I do is I find when I'm designing a set and a show generally, but especially a set, because the sets are hard for me, is I find a hook, and here the hook was obviously Mexican art, and that was one of the most fun shows I've ever done. The sun up there at the top is a total dead steel off Diego Rivera. And the palm tree, this was one of the things. The palm tree was one of the first things I got when I was thinking about this story. And when I started getting pictures, when I start thinking about puppet shows, I sometimes get whole scenes in my head. I can see a lot of action. And what I got here was that tree and Boss trying to, oh no, it was Pedro. Anyway, one of the characters tries to cut down the tree, and every time he swings the axe at the tree bends over to get out of the way.
Nice.
And so
the tree becomes a character. Part of
exactly.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the hooks was the whole Mexican art thing.
I also want to show this cactus, which we have here, and this is really cool because these are little plastic pearls that Bonnie glued on. I think glued on.
Yeah.
And one day, go tell the story of Dave calling.
Oh yeah, one day Dave called and he said, "What are you working on?" And I said, "I'm gluing pearls onto the cactus."
I'm putting pearls on the cactus.
And being Dave, he said, "Of course you are."
Of course you are. Of course you are. Yes. Hey, let's take a little look at just a clip of the reluctant dragon. We'll see a little bit of that.
Here, take this.
Ah! It's a sword!
No. You need to hold it like this.
Oh?
Like this.
So that's another example. That's another example of the set, right? I mean, this is like when you're no longer performing in front of just the black background, right? You've got this really vibrant, colorful set. So is this sort of post Dave Regan influence?
That's post Dave.
Yeah.
And that's post Dave. And I went way off on Art Deco. That was my hook for this. and I went for it. These are pop-ups and fold out things. That castle that you saw there comes open. We used all sorts of pop-up technology, and that folds open to reveal the interior for the dining room scene.
Fun.
The whole section slides off, and we were crazy.
Yeah,
it was insane.
I learned how to airbrush for this show, and it was one of those where when I got done with it, I felt like I knew how to do it and I could start over and do it this time, you know.
Fantastic. What's the show? I can't remember the name of the show. You guys performed it at a national festival, but the set has got all of these swirl. I mean, there's not a straight line to be found in the set. It's beautiful. Which show is
That
that?
was The Pirate, the Princess, and the Pea.
That's
And
oh, here it is.
show,
Yeah.
that show came to us because we were on stage. I was on stage. Bonnie was in the wings calling a show at a summer theater, and the sponsor just said, "Oh, they won't come to anything unless it's got princesses or pirates in it."
Okay.
That's such a late career title of a show, isn't it? It's like, what's going to sell? This is going to sell. Then we'll wrap a show around the title.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I explained it. It's the Princess and the Pea, except with pirates.
I would like to point out here, the set is all mine except for the ship. Dave did the ship.
And with this one, Bonnie wanted to break the tyranny of the rectangle.
Yeah. I wanted to get out of the box. I did not want this thing to have any straight lines in it whatsoever.
There are actually two playing areas. One is slightly downstage with the sand, hard to see in this picture, and then the other is up behind where the ship is. We didn't change sizes for that one. We did use the same puppets. Yeah.
And then so there we go. There we would see the two different playing areas, right?
Right.
That's the lower area, and then just up above between the blue circle and the waves is the other area.
And this is really important. It's hard to explain why the pirate's in his underwear here, but
we're just gonna leave that to the comments.
Yeah, it's good. And the princess knows more about being a pirate than he does, so she gets his clothes off of him.
They switch clothing.
And he gets to wear the dress, which actually is gender ambiguity is ever since Bonnie played my father in the first show that we were in. The gender ambiguity is a big part of Crabgrass.
Fun.
Yeah.
And one of the magical parts of puppetry is that anyone can play anyone.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I had the pleasure of seeing what I think was your very last performance.
Mm-hmm.
It was post-COVID, and so it was a virtual performance, and it was, if I'm not mistaken, at the Puppet Showplace Theater in Boston.
Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was The Lion, the Mouse, and Other Tales, and this was back on August 9th, 2020. I was so pleased that I got to be in the virtual audience for that show. Can you tell me a little bit about that final performance and what that was like for you?
Art, for those of you who haven't seen Art's virtual work, it's amazing the way he's created the environment of a live performance. We struggle with that because so much of our stuff is really tied to audience feedback, our timing, our rhythms. I distinctly remember being in one show with Dave where I came around backstage and said, "This has to be less funny.
Yeah.
We have to make the show less funny. We don't have time for all this
Too
laughter."
funny.
We've got to be at the next school in 20 minutes. They've got to.
and also we couldn't get, the way our stuff works pretty quickly, pretty fast, bam, bam, bam. And if you've got a huge reaction on this thing, they're missing the next couple of things. So anyway, this show was really fun because it was just Bonnie. It was a solo performance for me, but none of our stuff is solo. It's Bonnie and Roxy, Myram, and Sarah Nolan, another brilliant influence on us, even though she's just in the early part of her career. And because they were really experienced at producing the virtual shows, I could just do the show and not have to worry about anything else. And
also because we performed at the Showplace so many times, it was very easy to imagine the audience right there.
Nice.
Because that was the first time they weren't there.
Yeah, it was. That was really. It felt like a really good finale. the day before we had done an on-site studio virtual tour at our house in Vermont. And so we'd shown a lot of stuff, and then we finished with the performance, and that was really lovely. Yeah.
I'm really glad you feel that way, because from the audience, that's exactly, I was watching you wrapping up your careers and thinking to myself, that is a performance that I would want to go out on. So so well done to both of you, and well done to Puppet Show Place and Sarah and Roxy and everyone out there for just, man, they really did get the virtual game going pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So you performed your last show. What have you been up to since August 9th of 2020?
We've been going to doctor's appointments.
Yeah, it's not that funny.
It's a very long story. How many hours do you have? But basically, we made the long story short. When Trump was elected in the United States, we made the decision to apply to Canada for permanent residency. And we found out 2 weeks before the pandemic shut everything down that we had gotten in. And so then we spent a very long time trying to figure out what to do about it.
So last winter, we were in Nova Scotia for about 6 months. We sold our house. We got rid of 80% of everything we owned.
A whole lot of puppets.
Yeah, and we didn't know where we were coming back to. So we still have a lot of puppets, but we have like 10% of what we've created over the years is still with us. And this year we've been back we've been back for 10 months in the US. We've got a tiny house on wheels that we're living in.
Just down the street from our old house.
And we've got this studio that we're renting, which is how we live in a tiny house.
People get very impressed, and I said, we are so impressed that you downsized enough to live in a tiny house. And I say, that's nice. You haven't seen our studio.
You should be impressed anyway, because of what we used to have.
Yeah, that's true.
And Bonnie has been for the last 5-6 years now.
Yeah, I do felting. This is one of the things I do, but I make felted birds and animals. These are needle felted and then wet felted, for those of you who have any idea what felting is. And they don't appear in puppet shows. I make them, and then you know what? I put them down, and they just stay there.
Wow, look at that. That's amazing.
I do a lot of birds. So this is, when I see the kind of output that I have when I just work ongoing, which is what I do when I don't have anything else to do, is I just work. Now I know why we made 28 shows.
Yeah. And that's scratching your creative itch.
One of my
Yes.
favorite birds.
Seriously, yeah. There's another one of my birds.
Those are
And
great.
people say when Bonnie does some high-end craft shows, and they say, how do you come up with these things? It's like, well, actually they don't have to move. So that makes it.
This is nothing.
Right, that's 90% of it, right? It's like you're only doing 10% of the work if you're building just a creature.
Seriously.
If you want to buy some of these, we can go to bonniesbeast.com, right? You're selling them on.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's
Yeah.
really, really cool. So Jamie, what are you, aside from dodging the needle felting needles that are flying all over the house, how are you? Yeah. Oh, great. How are you scratching your creative itch?
I'm exploring going back to, I started off doing physical theater and clowning and mime before I got on a 40-year-old detour. And I still want to perform. And I've studied a little bit with Avner Eisenberg, Avner the Eccentric, who's a world famous clown, one of the genre breakers of the 80s. He's still teaching a bunch of classes, a bunch of workshops, just learning more about shape in my body and which is very different from when I used to do this stuff. And I want to perform. I don't want to have to build an entire universe, and I don't want to have to carry it from place to place twice a day. So
that's perfect, because that leads me right to my next question. What do you miss most about being a live touring puppet theater, and what do you miss the least about touring a live puppet theater?
the audience.
The children.
What we got to do for 40 years was we'd go someplace and 500 children would laugh, and then they'd all clap, and then somebody would give us money.
And they tell us how great we are.
Yeah.
And then we go off and we do it again.
Yeah.
And it really, and there were some rough days in there, but there was the occasional negative audience, or death by puppet, but mostly it was just a blast.
It was just so much fun.
Yeah.
But I did come across, as I was going through stuff, pulling information and pictures and stuff for tonight's event, I came across the weekend where I performed solo. Bonnie wasn't with me. Solo show, performed at Ivoryton Play. I can't remember the sequence. Liz might remember because she'd know what days I performed at her theater. I think I was on Long Island at Liz Joyce's Go Down the Boat Theater on Friday or Thursday or something like that. And then the next day I was in Ivoryton, Connecticut at Ivoryton Playhouse, a beautiful space. And then the next day I was in Niagara Falls. And it was like, even as I was driving to Niagara Falls, I thought, I can't do this anymore. I cannot do this.
Ridiculous.
And,
the Niagara Falls was a good paycheck.
It was, people were really trying, and they really wanted our show. They'd seen it at the National Festival at UConn, and they really wanted us. And and I did a great show, but it was hard. And
you were feeling it that day, huh?
Yeah. And one of the things we vowed from the beginning is we didn't ever want to look tired on stage. We didn't ever want to look like it's too hard.
We wanted to stop before we should have stopped.
Yeah.
We didn't want to get to the point where someone would go, oh, geez, they're kind of past it, aren't they?
So we are glad, Art, that you saw that performance and said, wow, what a great show to stop performing.
Nice. If you were to give advice to someone at the beginning of their career or just starting out in live family puppetry, what advice would you give them? Perform.
You learn so much from your audience. You don't know what a show is until you have an audience, because that's the other half of the show. And we were so lucky coming in when we did. And for pretty much our whole career, up until the last couple of years, we would open a show and we'd have 8 or 10 or 12 performances.
Bam. Yeah.
And then we'd take a week off to make adjustments.
Yeah, because we had all of that information that we just gathered from the audience. And that was really exciting.
Dave just typed in the comments, according to you, I was already too old when I started.
We made an exception.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, I've just enjoyed getting to spend a little bit of time with you. I hope we get to see each other in person again the next time there's a festival rolling around, because I would just love to be able to continue this conversation with you. But unfortunately, we are running low on time. Everyone, thank you so much. Thank you to Crabgrass for coming out and sharing their stories with us. Thank you, Liz, for producing. Thank you, Bradshaw, for helping with all of the media. And thank you guys for all of your questions and comments. And thank you for joining us. Next month, March 10th, we have Mike Horner of Mesner Puppet Theater. And then I think after that, I don't have the date in front of me, but Sarah Nolan will be joining us as well. And so,
Great.
So I just feel so blessed to get to talk with you guys and with other puppeteers and to have all of you join us out there. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again, Bonnie and Jamie. We'll see you all
Thanks,
next
everyone.
time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Art.
Bye.